Greetings, everyone. It is a pretty nice morning here in southeast Georgia. Got that little bit of a cloudy haze on the horizon. Still a little bit of the pinks and the blues coming up as the sun rises. Looks pretty nice. I'm doing pretty decent. Woke up later than I wanted to, but it is what it is. Gonna have the Russia-American talks today here in Alaska while Ukraine gets sidelined. Always fun. The unnecessary activation of the military in DC continues, as it will for at least the next 4 weeks, and potentially longer if Congress, does nothing to stop it, which I wouldn't be surprised because they're weak. And yeah, at least it's almost the weekend. I guess that's one good thing going on. Let's jump into the news and see what's being talked about.
Meetings of the board of GPP's governing body, the Georgia Public Telecommunications Commission, are open to the public. You can find information about the date, time, and location of the meeting at gpp.org/board meetings, or you can call the GPP care team at 800-222-4788. And thank you for your support of GPP.
The latter would probably be more accessible for most of us Georgians, because I would guess at the physical meeting in Atlanta.
NPR News. I'm Michelle Martin in Washington, D.C.
I'm Martinez in Culver City, California. President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin meet today in Anchorage, Alaska for a high-stakes summit aimed at ending Russia's war with Ukraine. In just a few minutes, we'll speak with former U.S. Ambassador to Russia, Michael McFaul, to get his take on today's meeting. First, let's take a look at how we got here.
Trump has said that ending the war is his priority.
And if it's a bad meeting, it'll end very quickly. And if it's a good meeting, we'll end up getting peace in the pretty near future.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was not invited. That meeting, Trump says, could come next.
All I want to do is set the table for the next meeting, which should happen shortly.
We're having a meeting to plan meetings.
NPR Senior White House correspondent is in Anchorage.
Corporate business things. Well, and I've seen them before, and they're absolutely infuriating to be part of.
The meeting is set to start at 11 a.m. local time out here. That's
instead of determining, are we going to make 5,000 units of Unit A and 4,000 units or Unit Bs? This is about the lives of millions of Ukrainians.
Next, they'll be joined by their advisors for a working lunch. And yesterday, the White House said that Trump and Putin will hold a joint press conference.
Really? Okay, so I remember their last joint press conference. That was in Helsinki, Finland, 2018, I believe, right? I remember it was widely viewed as a bit of an embarrassment for Putin at the time.
Yeah, that summit took place as a special counsel was investigating Russian meddling in the 2016 presidential election. That investigation is something that Trump is still raging about. He calls it the Russia hoax. So during that joint press conference, Putin denied any election interference, and Trump appeared to take Putin's side over that of the U.S. intelligence community. Trump faced incredible backlash at home among Republicans and Democrats alike, and eventually walked back some of what he said. But now, 7 years later, Trump says that summit was a success, and he is positioning himself as uniquely able to handle Putin.
If I were president, in my opinion, he would much rather take over all of Ukraine. But I am president, and he's not going to mess around with me.
In 2018, when Trump met with Putin, the domestic political stakes for Trump were quite high, but Trump was focused on terrorism and nuclear nonproliferation. Looking back, those were much simpler times. Now Putin is 4 years into the latest chapter of this war and is testing U.S. and European resolve.
Oh, for those simpler times, Tam. All right, so what does success look like from this meeting today?
Trump has been all over the map in terms of his expectations for the meeting. He's talked about the need to divvy up territory. That's something that Ukraine's president has opposed. Trump hasn't really been precise in what he wants to see today, and there are concerns that Trump could be wooed by happy talk from Putin about economic cooperation or something else that Trump can call in. But Trump has been growing increasingly frustrated with Putin for saying he wants peace while continuing to bomb civilians in Ukraine. He said there could be consequences for Russia if something meaningful doesn't happen here today. And a reminder that he has allowed the sale of powerful weapon systems to NATO to help Ukraine and has threatened to punish countries like India for buying Russian oil. Now this meeting leaves an open question of what comes next as Russia makes gains on the battlefield.
That's NPR's Tamara Keith in Anchorage. Tamara, thanks.
You're welcome, Keith.
For more on this summit, we're joined now by Michael McFaul. He served as U.S. Ambassador to Russia during the Obama administration and was the Senior Director for Russian and Eurasian Affairs at the National Security Council. Ambassador McFaul is currently Director of the Freeman Spokane Institute for International Studies at Stanford University. Good morning, Ambassador. Thanks for joining us once again.
Good morning.
Sure. Do you have any expectations for today's meeting?
I mean, this is the dude who went through the
I hope it will be
Crimea crisis.
I hope it'll be a step towards ending this horrific war, this barbaric invasion that Putin launched 3.5 years ago. Everybody wants to end this war. My Ukrainian colleagues want this war to end. And President, as you just were, your reporters were just talking about, he said he wanted to help end it. So I applaud his efforts to try to end it, and I hope he has a strategy for achieving his objectives. That's the part I'm least optimistic about.
Yeah.
So to that end, do you have any sense of what Trump's strategy might be going into this meeting? I mean, our colleague just reminded us that Trump and Putin met before in Helsinki in 2018, when Trump publicly sided with Putin, contradicting U.S. intelligence reports, and that was a huge uproar at the time, as we just said. Now the president keeps insisting that his relationship with Putin is an asset, but that hasn't stopped Putin from escalating attacks on Ukraine, even as Trump keeps pouring
it's an asset to Putin, not to the American people or its supposed allies.
Might be, what pressure points might he use?
Well, first, I'm glad you're reminding us of Helsinki. That was in 2018. That was a complete disaster. I was there, and there was no gain for American national security interests or European interests or anybody else. And I think the president embarrassed himself when he sided with Putin and against our intelligence community. So I hope, at a minimum, we don't have a repeat of that in Anchorage. What I do hope is that the president will find out, as he said, and I think he's right about this, is Putin serious about negotiating, and could that lead to a trilateral meeting between President Zelensky, Putin, and Trump? What I think the worst outcome would be is if President Trump starts negotiating on behalf of the Ukrainians without the Ukrainians in the room. That's my worst nightmare.
What's going to happen? He's going to start talking out of his ass.
For a deal, right?
He's going to make a deal. It's going to be terrible.
Of a meeting with the President of the United States of America. Remember, we're talking about an indicted war criminal here, Vladimir Putin. Second, he invited him to the United States. So Putin's already got a lot out of this meeting. Trump needs something tangible, and I hope that doesn't make him too anxious to start negotiating on behalf of the Ukrainians, because that would be a disaster. If he jams President Zelensky with something he can't accept, that would be the worst of all outcomes.
It'll make Zelensky seem like a problem.
And, it has to be said that Trump enters the summit without experienced Russia hands at his side, because the State Department staff has been gutted. So if you know Putin, I mean, you've dealt with him many times. What would you counsel President Trump to be mindful of?
Well, first, I don't like the idea that they have a one-on-one with just the translators. I worked for President Obama at the White House. I organized 2 summits, actually, in 2009 and 2010, and I was always in the room with the president because he understood that he doesn't know all the issues. President Obama in U.S.-Russian relations, he wanted some expertise in the room. And let's just take the obvious. President Putin knows a lot about Ukraine. He knows a lot about the war. He's briefed in detail about every village where the war is happening, and therefore there's an incredible asymmetry of information between Putin and Trump going into this meeting. So I hope that President Trump would have somebody in the room. It sounds like he won't, but if he doesn't, I hope he listens and doesn't try to actually begin to negotiate, because I think he might be trying to get a deal, not knowing what all the facts are and especially not thinking about what would be acceptable, not just to President Zelensky, but to the Ukrainian people. Ukraine, after all, is a democracy. Zelensky just can't do whatever he pleases, and I hope President Trump is constantly thinking about that when he's talking to Putin today.
So what would you consider a success from a U.S. perspective?
A meeting with President Zelensky, Putin, and Trump. If there are preconditions that could be set up today that would allow for that to happen, I think that would be a success. I think the disaster would be with the president somehow agreeing to land swaps, and he's already hinted at that. That are not his land to swap. I just want to be clear. The president does not have the authority to swap Ukrainian land.
So he doesn't have the authority.
But he wants to. He wants to. He wants to be the emperor of the Western world.
Given the president's sort of on again off against support for Ukraine, do you think that Ukrainians will eventually have to concede territory for this war to end, in your opinion?
I think they may have to concede the fact that they will only reunite the country through peaceful means. That's a little different than handing over territory. That, I think, could be an acceptable, very difficult outcome, but with one giant condition. Everybody keeps using the phrase land for peace, land for peace. So Ukrainians need to know how we are going to help guarantee the peace.
Yeah.
That's the biggest question to them. What are the security guarantees that doesn't just lead to an outcome where there's peace today, but 2 years later, Putin invades again?
And the only way I think of
that, to me, they could have, I think the easiest way to do it would be Ukrainian membership into NATO.
Exactly.
That's a decision that the NATO allies can make without asking for Putin's blessing. But that's a really big deal that so far nobody's talking about.
Yeah, that's really the only way you can protect them. It guarantees
Thanks so much for joining us.
American protectionism and European protection. It guarantees American protection and European protection well into the future, and not just a loose agreement between, elected leaders of today, but maybe not the elected leaders of tomorrow. And it will require much larger responses to any act of aggression on a member state than what previous, I can't even call them treaties, just, loose allyship that is had between, these countries on the periphery of the Western world and the Western military-industrial complex itself, right? Ultimately, I'm not in favor for it at all because, and by that I mean I'm not in favor of this mass militarization that has, been happening. Well, I guess since the beginning of civilization itself, but really in the way that we've seen it since the beginning of the 1900s, with the boom of the military-industrial revolution, I would say, or at least that sparked the seeds of it. So ultimately, I think it's going to raise tensions in a way, but at least will guarantee protections for the Ukrainian people, or at least increase the amount of protections. It will make countries like Russia less likely to do something stupid and invade, a NATO member state, because there are consequences to it. Unfortunately, when you have a person like Donald Trump in charge of the executive who gives no shit about what the representative delegation of the government cares or does, and will gladly use her power at every step of the way, and who sees NATO more of a hindrance than a help to push American hegemony and the interests of the American state and the American business class, right? It just makes it a lot harder to even put faith into becoming a NATO state in the first place, right? Why join NATO if the supplier of all the guns is going to try and ditch you at the first opportunity, or ditch all of y'all at the first opportunity you can get to save money, or treat all the other members of the treaty organization as vassal states, as servants, so he can squeeze more out of them, whether that's economic deals through buying more non-military items, or if it is through strictly military economical gains for America, i.e. you're going to have to buy 10 more loads of Lockheed Martin missiles, or 20 more loads of DRS fire control systems, or stuff like that. So it's a peculiar situation. It's an unfortunate situation that we're in, that the last 3 presidents have really just treated Ukraine as this pawn out in the far reaches of Europe, that can be poor kitty, sorry, dead cat on the road, poor kitty, just a pawn that can be just messed with, and as long as we don't completely lose it, it's fine. But it's really just antagonization of a real foe, and honestly a real foe in modern oligarchic Russia. So it's unfortunate. It is unfortunate, but we'll leave it there for the day. I hope y'all have a good one. We'll see if we'll do an afternoon one, but I kind of doubt it, honestly, just because they usually just do what's it called, Science Fridays in the afternoon. So it really just depends on what time I leave work. I doubt any time early, like some people get on Fridays, including myself, which happens every once in a while, but here's what it is. All right, y'all have a good one.